Today, for the very first time, I'm going to listen to the debut album from the Finnish symphonic metal band Nightwish, Angels Fall First. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new album review / reaction here on my channel. I am so excited to listen to this album, and I know that this is going to be probably one of my most important videos that I ever get to record, and I understand that. And I will get to that in a second, but before I say anything else, I want to say, if you've never seen any of the videos on my channel, know that usually what I'll do is I'll hit play on the album. I will listen all the way through to the album from front to back without pausing, and I'll be listening for the very first time, giving you my thoughts in real time as I'm listening. So, if that sounds interesting, keep watching. And also, I want to say that I have a tendency to talk a little bit about a band before I get into listening. So I'll give you a bit of sort of like my history with the band, the albums that I own, the things that I like from the band, and all that sort of stuff. And then after I'm done listening to the album, I generally like to do a sort of album overall view of the album, sort of a review at the end, if you will. So in the description of this video, I will include timestamps to all of the sort of different relevant sections of this video, including each individual song if you have a favorite song from this album that you'd like to hear. I can be pretty long-winded, and I tend to talk a little bit at the beginning of the videos, and I talk quite a bit afterwards as well. So I imagine this is going to probably be quite a long video. But I totally understand that not everybody who's maybe here so far and stuck with me through this little bit of a clunky intro here, you don't want to watch an hour and a half of me talking. And if you do, that's great. Thank you very much. But feel free to skip anywhere throughout the video to see any of the different sections, whatever is most interesting to you. Another thing that I want to mention is that in my videos, I do not include any audio from the album itself other than the sort of little intro bit that you just saw me play there. That's for many reasons, copyright, all sorts of things. I don't want to take anything away from the artist, and I don't want to get a copyright strike here on YouTube. So if you have your own copy of Angels Fall First, feel free to get it, put it in, listen to it however you want to listen to it. If you don't, I will also include in the description of this video a link to listen along with me on Spotify if you want to do that. I highly recommend listening along with me because it's going to basically just be me sitting here talking. Okay. So I know I said that this is going to be one of the most important videos that I ever film, and I really think that that's true because I understand what it means to go to YouTube and type in Nightwish reaction and to get hundreds and hundreds of videos. I know what that means because I've watched almost all of those videos. I am a Nightwish fan. I have been a big Nightwish fan since their album Once came out. You can see I have the vinyl back here behind me. That's one of my most prized vinyls that I own. I don't own a ton of vinyl, but I do own a fair amount. And I used to work at a record store, and when I was there, I was able to purchase this through the record store. And it's very, very, very important and special to me. That album is very important and special to me, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So, as I mentioned, I am a Nightwish fan. However, I have not heard Nightwish's first album. And it's kind of a silly story, and I know it probably is hard to believe that I love Nightwish so much. I have basically everything that I thought that they had ever put out basically right here with me on this table, and I'll get to that in a second. But last year, during the coronavirus pandemic, when everyone was staying home, I got really into reaction videos. I watched so many reaction videos of all sorts of different things: movies, TV shows, Game of Thrones reactions, few music reactions, a lot of music things, but most specifically a lot of Nightwish reactions. And I cannot explain to you the feeling that I had the first time that I saw a reaction video. I think the very first reaction video I ever saw to Nightwish was the Charismatic Voice channel, and she was reacting to Ghost Love Score, which just happens to be my all-time favorite Nightwish song. It has been since I got Once way back in 2003 or 2004 probably. I think that's when. I think the album came out in 2003. I'll look in a second. But anyway, that song was always really special to me. That album was really special to me. And in my life, I don't have a ton of people, a ton of friends that are music people, that love music. And I started watching all these reaction videos, and really most specifically the reactions to Ghost Love Score. And it was very special to me. I don't know how else to put it. I've never been able to sort of share my love of Nightwish or that song in particular, or just symphonic metal in general, with a lot of my friends. I have a lot of metalhead friends, and they think Nightwish is too soft. They shouldn't be clean singing, or some of my metal friends, even just the idea of having sort of like operatic vocals or whatever in metal music, just it doesn't really fit, doesn't work for them. And so seeing all these wonderful channels, all these wonderful people react to a song that's so special to me, and then go on to react to subsequent Nightwish songs, all of the songs that I was familiar with, that I already loved, and then also seeing people reacting to Floor singing, and just like experiencing that, and then going through on YouTube and watching all of the amazing best of Zangers competition that Floor was in back in 2020. I think it was 2020, maybe it was 2019. I think it was last year in 2020. But anyway, watching all of that and just sort of like experiencing this with all these other Nightwish fans was really truly special to me, as I'm sure it was for most of the people watching this. If you found this video, you're probably get recommendations like I do every day on YouTube for new Nightwish reactions. At this point, I can't even tell you how many Nightwish reaction videos I've seen. It is very, very, very many. I mean, it's got to be in the hundreds, for sure, over 100, for sure. Countless numbers of hours. And through all of this, it inspired me to start sort of trying to do my own reaction stuff this year. And on my channel, what I do is basically what I described earlier. I'll take an album, I will put it in my CD player for the very first time that I have never heard. Most of the time it's new albums, but sometimes it's an older thing that I've heard or that I just found out about. And I will listen all the way through and give my thoughts. One of my favorite things in the entire world to do is to sit and listen to new music for the first time. I absolutely love that. And I process music in what I think is a very unique way. Maybe not necessarily unique compared to all the other, YouTube reactors or anything like that, but certainly for me and all the people I know in my life, I find people tend to listen to lyrics a lot and the message of a song, and that is not really what I tend to focus on. I used to work at a recording studio, and I went to college for audio recording. I have a degree in audio recording. And so I tend to approach music from a more production standpoint. Why were these specific sounds chosen to go with these other sounds? How were the guitars mixed compared to the bass and the drums and the vocals? And how does everything fit in the mix? Production, things like that. So that's what I'm going to be talking about probably for the most part with this album. But earlier this year, I was like, why don't I try to do something a little bit different with my channel? Something I've always wanted to do is do a video about the entire discography of a band. A band whose album discography I have. And so one of the first bands that I thought of doing that with was Nightwish. And so I started to think about it, formulate the idea in my head that I was going to do my first video like this on my channel with Nightwish. This is way back sort of at the first quarter of 2021. And so I went online and I went on Wikipedia and I looked at the Nightwish Wikipedia for the very first time. And I was looking at their list of albums, and I was absolutely shocked. I was floored, pun intended, to learn that Oceanborn, which up to this point I had thought was Nightwish's first album, Oceanborn is not Nightwish's first album. Angels Fall First is. I had no clue that this album existed. None. No clue. And so I was like, I have been given a gift and, to some extent, a responsibility. I need to do an album reaction like I've been doing on my channel to the very first Nightwish album, which I unbelievably have never heard. So that's sort of the idea of how this situation came to be. I'm sort of embarrassed to the fact that I am such a big Nightwish fan, and I didn't know that this was even a thing. And anyway, I'm not going to go through and try to make excuses for the fact that I didn't know this album existed. I didn't. And so we're here, and I'm going to try to take the responsibility of being a fan, being someone that already knows about Floor and Annette and Tarja, and about, Marco leaving recently, and about their entire discography, and taking that responsibility and giving you my honest reaction to what is probably, honestly, I assume, going to be their worst album because it's their first one. But I'll get into my expectations of the album in a second. But so yeah, I guess I feel like I needed a little bit of an explanation here about who I am, first of all, and then my association with Nightwish, because this is a silly situation. Like, I get that. And I'm really grateful for anyone that wants to sit and watch this video. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about everything that I have experienced from Nightwish so far. So, as I mentioned, I thought Oceanborn was their very first album. I found out that it was their second album. So, I have, other than Angels Fall First, I have and have heard many times all of the previous Nightwish albums. Oceanborn, Wishmaster, Once, Dark Passion Play, Imaginarium, sorry. Don't want to get in trouble by the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus people. End of our Angel, Endless Forms Most Beautiful, and then, of course, Human to Nature that came out last year. I was debating, usually when I do a video like this, I'll go through my discography that I have of the band, and I'll kind of like rank everything in order that I like so that you get an understanding. But I kind of want to save that for if I do decide in the future to do my overall discography, my discography sort of overview of Nightwish. I kind of want to save my rankings of the albums and everything, but I will say that I sort of go back and forth. I think my favorite Nightwish album is either Imaginarum or Once. I think Once is really special in a lot of ways, but I also think Imaginarum is special in other ways. I also really like Dark Passion Play. I also really enjoy Oceanborn. I think at this point, Wishmaster is probably my least favorite of the albums, though I'm going to kind of assume that Angels Fall First will maybe eke under that just barely. And that's kind of interesting because I, too, like all of you, as I said, I absolutely love the YouTube reactions and all this stuff. And watching all the reactions has absolutely made me fall in love with Floor. I have one of the After Forever albums. I think their second one. I don't have any of the revamp stuff. I knew who Floor was before she joined Nightwish because I liked After Forever, and I was kind of kept tabs on her a little bit here and there. But I didn't mention it so far, but symphonic metal is one of my absolute favorite genres of music, if not my absolute favorite genre of music. So I kept tabs on all the bands that Within Temptation, Epica, After Forever was an important one, because I have that one album of theirs. Nightwish, of course, and even more recent bands, Diabolus and Musica, Amberian Dawn, awesome stuff like that. So I knew who Floor was, but over the last year, I've really gotten to fall in love with her and know her a lot more through all these videos online I've been watching. And I feel like I've gotten to know the members of Nightwish actually a lot better too, because while I love their music and I know that very well, I didn't really know that much about the members of the band, but I've gotten exposed to a lot of things I didn't know over the last year. But the two Floor albums with Nightwish, Endless Forms Most Beautiful and Human to Nature, I actually were really disappointing albums to me. And I'm not going to dwell on this or go on about this forever, but just know, like, I love Floor. I think she's actually probably the most talented vocalist Nightwish has ever had. But her two albums just aren't as interesting to me. I think that there's just something about the way the songs were written. There's something about the vocal melodies. There's something about it that doesn't speak to me as much. And I think that that's not me saying that the songs are worse. I just think that Thomas and the guys in the band and the lady in the band are now writing music that's sort of going in a direction that's not necessarily the things that I enjoyed from Nightwish. They're going in slightly different direction. Especially with Human to Nature, I've heard a lot of things in there that were really different and interesting, like weird vocal rhythms and things. And the inclusion of Troy in the band as well. I personally don't think that was a really good. I mean, obviously he's a good fit for the band, and he's been on a ton of the albums that I have in this stack here. But having him be an official member of the band, I think you can definitely feel the sort of more Celtic folky influence in the band now. And that wasn't what I was coming to Nightwish for. I like the more epic, bombastic, crazy, huge, 75 piece orchestra, 120 piece choral arrangements, like these crazy symphonic elements I feel are taking a bit of a back seat to the more folky sort of Celtic influence stuff. And I think Troy has a lot to do with that because he's such an absolutely fantastic musician. And that's his wheelhouse. And who knows, maybe Tomas is feeling like having things be a bit more intimate. Now, anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't want to give all these excuses and go on forever about their albums, but you just know, for me personally, I actually think Annette might be my favorite vocalist they've ever had. I enjoy the sort of more poppy aspect she brought to the band, and I think those two albums, Dark Passion Play and Imaginarum, are fantastic, flawless albums. But then we have Once, which is, I think, an absolutely masterpiece, perfect album as well, and the 4 albums that Tarja had before. Hold on, do I have Oceanborn in here? Or not Oceanborn, Century Child. I don't have my Century Child album in here. Huh. Well, it must be upstairs still, but I do also own Century Child, and I am also very familiar with that. The first album that Marco was on, and that we got some Marco vocals on. Phantom of the Opera is on that album. All sorts of great stuff. So also just know I do also have Century Child. But anyway, I love Annette. I love Tarja. Love Floor for her live performances and everything I've seen from her online. But her 2 Nightwish albums have just really disappointed me. I think the mixing on Endless Forms Most Beautiful was the thing that disappointed me the most. I think the vocals were mixed a little too low. The high end was mixed a little bit too much. The heaviness was sort of taken away, even though I think their heaviest album, or their heaviest song, is on Endless Forms Most Beautiful. Yours is an Empty Hope, which... there's a ton of great reactions to that song out there too, but I think that the live version might be better than the album version, and it's cool to see Floor do her growls. Anyway, at this point, I feel like I'm almost trying to prove to you that I understand and know Nightwish, and that's not necessary. You can see what I have here. You'll hear what I have to say about the album. The few other things that I have here that I want to say, I have the End of an Era DVD. Bought this way back when it came out. Loved the DVD of it, loved listening to it. Don't really listen to the CDs very much, but it's awesome to have. And then, of course, in the context with this being Tarja's last show and all the drama that came from that and everything, this is really cool and special. And of course, it's mostly songs from Once, which is really amazing to me since I love that album so much. I have this goes in this pile. I also have... we all know it. You all know it. Everybody that knows Nightwish knows it. Anyone that has a reaction channel knows it. The Showtime Storytime live Blu-ray. Their show at Wacken Open Air Festival in Germany. Like I said, we all know it. We all know that moment. This moment right here. We all know it. Probably, maybe, the greatest moment in the history of all live music. I know it's ridiculous to say, but I think that's one of the reasons everyone's probably watching this, if you're watching this. So, I've mentioned a couple times that all the reactors. One of the things I did want to do in this video is to just sort of shout out some of my favorite reaction channels. So over here in the corner by me, for the next couple minutes or however long, I will put some video footage and the name of the YouTube channel from some of my absolute favorite reactors. So if you're watching this because you love some Nightwish reaction videos like I do, and you see someone that you're not familiar with, go check out their channel. So that'll be over here for the next little bit while I talk about some rest of this stuff. So along with this, I have a Blu-ray copy of Imaginarum, the movie. Imaginarum by Nightwish. I can't believe I haven't seen more people talking about this online. A lot of my favorite reactors, no one's ever mentioned this. Nightwish basically made an entire movie. They took the concepts of their music videos, made it into an entire movie with amazing music, sort of instrumental stuff, and sort of the score aspect from Imaginarum. They made a whole freaking cool, sweet, sort of like Christmassy movie, and it's really cool. I mean, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's really cool, and I think deserves to be talked about online more. So if you are not familiar with this, see this movie. It's amazing. I also want to shout out here. I have Tarja's first solo album, and I don't know why, but after her first album, I just kind of fell off. I do have the I bought them somewhere online. The What Lies Beneath files. I have WAV files for that I burned onto a CD that I have in here. And I think she has a Phoenix album or something like that. So I'm familiar with her work, but not very much. I listened to a few things on Spotify here and there. I do have her Act 1 Blu-ray, which this is, I think, PAL. I don't think this is even NT. Well, it doesn't matter, but this is not necessarily rated for the United States, but I know it works on my PlayStation 4, and it did work on my PS3 as well. So I have this. I have Annette Olsen's solo album that she released after leaving Nightwish. Really cool, interesting album if you haven't heard it. There's some cool songs on here that sort of remind me of Disney songs, and I think that's kind of neat. And then I have Tuomas Holopainen's solo project, the Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck. This is a really cool project that if you're unfamiliar with, you should look up. I know he does some songs with, I believe his wife sings on a couple of these songs, but there's some neat sort of American folk influences on this album, which are kind of neat and harken back almost to like Once and Creek Mary's Blood and some of that stuff. So there's some neat stuff on here. So that's the Nightwish stuff that I have at this point. I'm disappointed that I forgot to bring Century Child down here to prove that I have all of their albums. But anyway, I'm sure you get it at this point. So yeah, okay, let me gather my thoughts here. Angels Fall First. This is my unopened copy that I bought off of Amazon. And this is the, I believe it's the sort of remastered, re-released version. The date on here is 2008. And I believe the original year that this came out was 1998 or 1997. I'm not positive. I did look at their wiki page just before coming down here to record this, and I saw that they, Tuomas started Nightwish as sort of a idea for like acoustic-y folk stuff, like they would sing around a campfire, and they released some demos or made some demos, and a record label or someone was interested in them, so they went in the studio and I think they did 5 songs, and of the studio or record labels loved it, and they had them go record 4 more songs, I think. So I think what this album is the 9 songs, and then there's 4 bonus tracks. There's a Return to the Sea Nightwish demo, the Forever Moments demo, and a Finnish word that I can't pronounce that I'm sure I will butcher, and I apologize. Etiainen demo. Which Itainen is not a song that's on here, so I don't know what that would be. Oh no, it is. It's the track 9 has 4 movements to it, and it is the final movement, so it'd be the last thing that you would hear on the original album. Oh yeah, 1997. Okay, I need to be a little bit more perceptive here. So I'm gonna actually open this. I have not opened it yet. I was saving that for the video, which is probably stupid, but I like to open CDs a lot, give them a smell. You know, that feeling that you used to have back in the day when you could go to Walmart or wherever, get your CDs, and I'm going to leave the top part on, and I hate doing this, and I know it's blasphemous, but I'm going to open it like this. What? Oh, I saw it's autographed, but the disc looks autographed. I don't know if you'll be able to see that in the video, but it's not actually autographed. It's it's just part of the artwork of the disc. But that's really cool. I got excited there for a second. I was like, what the heck? But that's still really neat. So I want to read the back of this, because if you've never seen this version of the album before, this is what it says. It says Nightwish Reloaded. By the way, they must have done that. That's what this is called. In the course of the last decade, Finnish chart toppers Nightwish have acquired a major name and the international... have acquired the font is interesting. Have acquired a major name on the international Bard? Oh, hard. Ha! They could be Bard Rock, I guess. Bard Rock. That's great. Give it a loot. Just created a new genre here. Finnish chart toppers Nightwish have acquired a major name on the international hard rock scene, picking up gold and platinum awards and playing sold-out shows around the world. And this is where it all started. The brainchild of keyboard player Tuomas Holopainen, a man with an essentially otherworldly view and the musical/lyrical skill to communicate that vision, the Nightwish sound was pretty much in place from day one. A winning combination of strong melodies, soaring vocals, plus a very real sense of wonder. Totally agree with that assessment of the band. The otherworldliness, but also the sense of wonder and sort of fairy tale likeness. Really cool aspect to the band. Okay, let's take a look at the book here. Here's the book. On the back it says, "Bury my dreams, dig up my sorrows. Oh Lord, why the angels fall first." That plastic smell, that plasticky new CD smell. Oh my goodness, we are back in the 90s for sure. So first thing we see here, and I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud, but we have Empu, Juka, Thomas, and Tarja. We have, interesting. So Empu is credited with electric, acoustic, and bass guitar. So Empu played bass on this. That's interesting. Yuka played drums and percussion. Thomas played synths and vocals. Tara sang the vocals. So I'll show you a picture of the band as they were in 1997. Don't know if you can see that, but hopefully you can. Interesting thing to note, over the last few days before recording this, I went back and I listened to Oceanborn and Wishmaster again. And on Oceanborn, Thomas is credited as playing synths. And actually, I forgot to look on Wishmaster, so let's check that out real quick. Synths as well. So Thomas is credited on Oceanborn and Wishmaster as playing synths or synthesizers. If we look in once, Thomas keys and piano. So I'm assuming Century Child as well probably says keyboards or keys, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because when you say synthesizer, to me, that means something that's a little different than keys. Although, yes, technically, they would be the same. They're interchangeable terms in the music industry. Someone that would play synths is playing sounds that sound electric to me, that sound synthesized. Someone that's playing keys is, to me, and this is just sort of my interpretation, they are representing realistic sounding instruments that are being synthesized. So Thomas plays, for the most part, a piano or stringed sounds, some woodwinds, things like that, different orchestral elements. That's what he's playing on his keyboards. Almost everything that he's playing isn't really a synthetic sound that's something that couldn't be created acoustically. He is mimicking the sounds of flute or cello, string section, piano, what have you. That's what he's playing for the most part on any of their live things. But if you go back to their earlier stuff, they did have a lot of cool synthesizer sounds, and I actually really enjoy that stuff. Their first, on Oceanborn, which is their earliest album that I'm most familiar with, because I listened to that one a lot more than Wishmaster, because I like it more. There's cool synth solos, there's all sorts of neat things, and there's obviously a lot of piano. And at that point, all they could afford, I think, is just like maybe a cello, violin here and there, maybe a trumpet or something. They didn't have huge sections of musicians like they do on their albums after this, where they have a whole orchestra playing and a whole choir singing. So, of course, there's string sounds and all that stuff on Oceanborn and Wishmaster, and I'm going to assume on Angels Fall First, but it's all going to, for the most part, be synthetically created by Thomas. So that's something that's interesting to note and that I've been thinking about. So back to the booklet here, Angels Fall First. This is what Thomas says about the album. Here's the picture again, page. This was supposed to be more than a demo recording. Okay. What was supposed to be no more than a demo recording ended up becoming our debut album back in 97. Reflecting on those times now, I hear a cute little effort full of youthful ambition and an ignorance of what was to come. Elven Path still retains its childish charm, and Angels Fall First has one of the best lyrics in any of our songs. Roots can always be traced back to a particular place, and innocence, which is essentially the spirit of this album, can never be found again. Boy, does that resonate with me. As someone who has tried making music over the years, when I first started making music, I just made music. I wasn't thinking about it too much, and anything that I made doesn't come to being close to like a hundredth of anything that Nightwish has ever released. But I think I can relate to that. Like, there's just this sort of like innocence and this almost ignorance to what you're doing, where you're experimenting and you're trying different things. And you just are having fun because you don't know any better. You don't necessarily know that what you're doing is out of the norm or shouldn't be done because it's not the way it's usually done. And that was what I was hoping we were going to get from this album, because there's different ways you can approach a debut album. Some bands, their best album is their first album because that's the music that was building up inside them when they first discovered music, when they were a teenager to when they made their first album. You know, I think about bands like Linkin Park, who I think had fantastic albums further on in their career, but their first album is quite a bit different. Lots of bands are like that, where they have their album comes out, their first album, debut album comes out, and it's just they pour their heart and soul into it. And then subsequent albums, they get caught up in the machine that is the music industry, and they churn out something that's not what they necessarily wanted or was skewed in a specific direction because they were forced to by a record label, which thankfully doesn't happen as much nowadays. But I think you guys know what I'm talking about. The other thing you can expect from a debut album, a first album, is probably having their worst production, their lowest budget, possibly their most childish or immature sounding lyrics, things like that. And I wasn't necessarily worried about that with Nightwish, because we all know that Thomas is a musical, I hate to say musical genius, like modern day Mozart, what have you, but like we all know Thomas is a special person in the music industry. Anybody watching this video, looking up Nightwish reaction videos on YouTube, we all know Thomas is a special person, and thank goodness that he is out there making the music that he is. And so I don't think that this album is going to be those things that I was mentioning. I don't think that it's necessarily going to be, well, I hope, first of all, it doesn't sound terrible. I think it's going to have pretty good production, though I did read online that this album was a little bit more sort of folk influenced because that was what the purpose of the band was supposed to be when Thomas started it. So I'm assuming there's going to be more acoustic instruments. Actually, probably harkens back towards the music that they're making more now with Troy than what they were doing on Oceanborn and subsequent albums. Yeah, sorry, my thoughts are all, I'm just talking forever. This is a half-hour long intro, and I apologize for that. So the songs, we have Elven Path, Beauty and the Beast, which is interesting because people who are fans of symphonic metal know that a lot of symphonic metal bands, such as Epica, for example, do the vocal style that's referred to as Beauty and the Beast, where you have the beauty singing the choruses, angelic soaring female vocals for choruses, and then a lot of the verses and just different vocal parts throughout the song growl harsh vocals by a male. Or a lot of bands nowadays, or some cool bands nowadays, have females that can do really cool grunting, screaming vocals, and then a soaring chorus as well. So I think that would also fall into the Beauty and the Beast style of lyrics, but it sort of originated in the symphonic metal band with a male harsh vocal, female clean vocal, going back and forth between. But it's cool that Nightwish has a song called Beauty and the Beast, and that that's a whole aspect of the genre that they helped sort of pioneer. So that's really cool. I don't know. I did read online, and I'm almost disappointed that I spoiled this for myself, but I did see that this is the only album that Thomas actually like sings on. So there's going to be some Thomas vocals as well, which I do not know up to this point if I've ever heard him sing anything other than just sort of background vocals. So Beauty and the Beast, The Carpenter, Astral Romance, A Return to the Sea, Angels Fall First. Oh boy, and then a word in Finnish. Oh no, that's Tutankhamun. So that's King Tut, Egyptian reference. So that's cool. That's really interesting too, because Epica uses a lot of sort of Middle Eastern influences in their music, a lot of percussive elements, sitar, things like that. So that's cool to see that. Unless Tutankhamun is a word that is Finnish, and I'm just look like a fool here. But then we have Nymphomaniac Fantasia. Nymphomaniac Fantasia. Know Why the Nightingale Sings. That's a really cool song title. And then Lapi, Lapland, which is track 9, which has 4 parts. Iramayarvi, Witch Drums, This Moment is Eternity, and Itainen. And then the bonus tracks, like I said, are Return to the Sea, Nightwish, The Forever Moments, and Itainen. So it looks like Forever Moments is also not on here. And Nightwish not on here. So I wonder if those are 3 sort of songs that they did as their demo beforehand. And I don't know what Return to the Sea is. But Return to the Sea is in here. Return to the Sea. Interesting. There's a whole thing in here about Nightwish, and I'm not going to read that because I've already talked for 4 or 5 hours before I've even gotten into this. So let's look at the liner notes here for the credits. Tracks 1 through 9 recorded, engineered, and mixed by Tero Kimmunen at Kiti Huvekeskus Studio. Songs 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, April through May 1997. Okay, those are the first 5 songs, and then 1, 2, 6, 8, September 1997. Okay, mastered at Finvox Studios by Mika Usila. Produced by Thomas and Nightwish. All music by Nightwish. Lyrics by Thomas. Arrangements by Nightwish and Tero Kimmunen. Backing vocals by Nightwish. Flutes performed by Mr. Asa Ehitinen. I apologize. The main band photo, I don't care about the photos really. Okay, so it looks like other than their instruments, the only person that they had play on here is flutes. Flutes performed by Mr. Esa Leitinen. So there will be no cello, no orchestra, no choir, no nothing like that. Although they did say Nightwish doing backing vocals. I'm going to leave this out so I can listen to it. So I have talked and talked and talked and talked and talked, and probably most everybody has skipped to this section of the video. Just know you skipped a whole bunch of me talking, and I apologize if anyone has listened all the way through that. We're best friends now, aren't we? You totally get where I'm coming from. But I'm excited. Let's do this. But before we do, I will be right back. Look right here on the table. Ooh, I got my drink for this video, which is going to be my absolute of all time favorite beverage, Mountain Dew Voltage. And because I know people are going to probably wonder, I have a mixture of blue and red, so cherry and blue raspberry Kool-Aid in the bottom of my glass for my ice. And it's going to mix really well with this. And I've had my Mountain Dew in the freezer, so it should be cold. I know most people probably don't care about what I'm drinking, but I have had people ask. One of the very few comments that I've gotten on my past videos was someone thought that I was drinking some rancid juice or something because it changed colors. But what's happening here is I have layers, a little layer of frost, Mountain Dew, and some ice that will eventually melt into the rest of it and make it reddish. Okay. Got my CD player here. I hope I said everything that I wanted to going into this video. I have been thinking about recording this video now 4 months, as I said, which is why I've been so long-winded. Maybe I'll try to cut some of that stuff out. But if not, if anybody stayed through that whole process of me talking about everything from side projects to King Tut in Egypt, thank you very much. No, I appreciate it very much. Okay, so the CD is in. I have the booklet. I'm going to be hitting play in 3, 2, 1. Hold on. I'll tell you when it's starting. My CD player will take a little bit. I'm hoping the production is pretty good here. Okay, it's starting right now. We got synths. Not a big fan of spoken word in music, but I was expecting that, but Now, I'm listening to the remastered version of this, so it's not necessarily a faithful, obviously, Okay, I didn't need to worry about it not being metal at all because it's metal. So it sounds like Thomas's keyboards are mono right in the middle right now, and he's doing some string stuff. The guitars were overdubbed and panned, very stereotypical for metal, for heavy music. Means Empu played the track at least twice, once panned left, once panned right. Bass in the middle, which Empu also played. Wow. Okay. Earlier on in her career, all the albums that I have, Tarja really had a very operatic feel to almost every vocal she sang. And then it was once they got to sort of Once and a little bit on Century Child that the operatic sort of style that she was singing left her, and she sang with a more sort of straight or pop style. But that first lyric I heard on this was not operatic at all. Very different from what I thought. Harpsichord keyboard patch right in the middle. It is just mono right in the middle behind the vocals. Back to the main riff of the song. I think this song is 4.5 minutes long. I'm gonna keep an eye on that. One other thing that I'm a little scared of is I absolutely hate it and cannot stand it if a song fades out. To my knowledge, Nightwish has only ever done it a couple times throughout their whole career. Now, I know you're sitting there going, you hypocritical, ridiculous person. Ghost Love Score fades out, and to that I say, yeah, it would be the most perfect song ever recorded in all of history if it didn't fade out, which is why I actually prefer the live version that Flora sang. Plus, obviously, she had the incredible moments and the most flawless vocal performance of all time. Anyway, sorry, back to this. This does feel raw and looser, but the recording quality is fantastic. And I'm going to probably chalk that up to the good mixing, but also, I assume, the very good remastering. I do not know if this was remastered from the original master, like stereo tapes, like the actual, like if the guy who remastered this album had access to the original tracks, I would assume, because it sounds so fantastic. Not that a debut album in 1997 couldn't sound fantastic. But it does sound really, really, really good. Okay, so we've got Thomas playing strings here, and the guitars are just going. Okay, sample. Oh my gosh, I'm so dumb, I haven't been paying attention. We have references of goblins and Bilbo and the Rings of Power. This song is about the Lord of the frickin' Rings. Elven Path. Hell yeah, that's cool. That is badass. That's awesome. Love it. Love it. See, I'm not one of the other reasons I haven't enjoyed the most recent Nightwish albums is because they're a little bit too metaphysical for me, a little bit too sort of like, you know, they're reaching for the stars and talking about all these abstract things, and that's just not really me. So I wonder if that's a sample from maybe like the animated Hobbit movie or the animated Lord of the Rings movies, or if that's something they created just for this. Guitar solo here, Empu. This is awesome, you guys. I'm so excited. Like I said way before, like I understand the gravity of this situation. I'm getting to sit here listening to a brand new Nightwish album, brand new to me. What the hell? That was a stupid ending to the song. End the song, please. That was really interesting. They did end it, but it didn't really even have time to fade out. Okay, Beauty and the Beast. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to the lyrics here. I wonder if it's just straight up about the movie Beauty and the Beast, which I think came out when? 1991? 1992? It was the movie before. Ooh, double bass. Okay. It's so interesting, too, because metal was in such a different place back in 1997. You know, the latter half of the 90s is basically where our modern-day metal that we think of now was created. But, you know, there wasn't a lot of stuff in the early to mid-90s that was influencing and that sounded like this. You know, we have theater tragedy, maybe Celtic frost, stuff like that a little bit, but awesome. Little progressiveness here. Very nice retardando. Okay, so this is a minute-long intro for this song. 6.5. Okay, now we have Thomas playing the sort of harpsichord patch on his keyboard, and it's panned to the left. The guitar, same thing, overdubbed. So now we have a higher octave harpsichord patch on the right, so they're balancing each other out. Is that Thomas singing? Wow. I love it. Are they going to sing together? His vocals remind me of someone, but I can't think of what. Not the greatest vocal performance of all time, but man, that's cool. The guitars are really impressing me. It sounds great. I mean, I didn't expect it to sound bad, but... that symphonic metal. Oh, I love you. The detuned, the pitch shifted, highly accented English Finnish accent. English spoken with the Finnish accent.
Let's be dark and moody. But we can't really be dark, so let's just pitch shift our voice down. But be dramatic about it.
I can poke a little bit of fun, can I? But now we have a great harmonized solo. One of the solos was, he recorded it twice with the harmony part. Panned a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. That's nice. Very balanced, everything so far. The bass sounds just like low frequency. I don't hear very much definition to it at all. But that's kind of per the usual for Nightwish. Some of their earlier albums, Wishmaster and Ocean Born as well, had this really low, beefy low end, like this, like almost like it was doubled an octave lower or something. Like it didn't really even sound like a bass guitar, but you can hear that the bass guitar is on. Oh, here it's back. Ooh, there's some low frequencies. When you're using sound effects and things, sometimes the sound effects are recorded at such high quality that when you insert that into a song, it can throw off the fidelity almost a little bit, if that makes sense. This is really great, but I didn't really perceive like a chorus that I would sing out loud with. Let's hope this song doesn't just fade out. Oh no, we still got a minute and a half of it. I love this. This is awesome. We're going on a journey, guys. Which every Nightwish album is a journey, and in a lot of cases, every Nightwish song within itself is its own journey. Love that harpsichord. Now we have a harp, an actual harp patch. We also have a string pad going on in the back as well. Maybe a bit of a chorus patch. Now, when I say patch, that's the different sounds that you use on a keyboard. So now Tarja's singing. So if I say string patch, that means Thomas is playing with a string sound. Harpsichord patch, harpsichord sound. Now the drums as well. The toms sound great, big. The kick sounds great. The kick and the snare aren't fighting each other. A lot of metal albums have that's kind of an issue. A lot of people want a beefy sounding snare, and what that does is if you make a really beefy sounding snare drum with lots of mid-woofy range to it, it can sometimes take away from the necessary mids and low frequencies you have to have in the kick to make it punchy and not snappy. Okay, so that song ended, and then everything just kind of... everyone must have just held their instruments out, and they're like, no, we'll just kind of fade it off after we're done with the last note. Interesting choice, but at least they ended the song first. So this is the Carpenter. Okay, I think I hear some acoustic guitar in there. But it's not very definitive. It's basically, I just hear a little tinkliness. Okay, there. Okay, so now we have acoustic guitar, recorded mono, pan to the left. And bass as well in there, also panned left a little. Now acoustic guitar on the right side strumming. Bass is panned in the middle now. And the bass has nice definition now. It probably did have definition before, but it was playing mostly the same thing as the guitar, which is something that you could have. I could easily see this album having an issue where Empu was playing the guitars and the bass. If he wasn't thinking of the bass as a separate instrument from the guitar, you can have albums where the bass is basically just doing the same thing the guitar does, and that's not necessarily interesting. Wow, Tarja is singing with a different style. Now I do hear Thomas in there as well, so they're singing together. That's awesome. And I don't know who the new bass player is. I did see that they have a new bass player with them, and I did see on YouTube yesterday or the other day that Nightwish released a live performance of them. It was like Nightwish with the Stars or something, and them performing with no audience. I didn't watch enough of it to see. I think maybe they were just doing Human to Nature. I didn't see what happened during the parts where Marco would normally sing, though, if their new bass player is singing or if Troy is doing the parts, because Troy does a lot of singing now, though that would be very different sounding, so I don't know what Nightwish is going to do moving forward. The bass is awesome on this song, by the way. Nice drum fill there. Always nice when you have a metal drummer trying to do like a slow acoustic song and they're like, I'm going to still be metal. But we all know Yuka, incredible drummer. One of the best parts of any of their live videos, for sure. What I was going to say, though, one of the biggest regrets I have for Nightwish, and I'm sure all of you feel the same, the fact that we never got Nightwish performing with a giant orchestra and choir, like so many other symphonic metal bands have done. Within Temptation, amazing. The Black Symphony, incredible. Epica's done it before too. But the fact that we never got Nightwish performing with a really cool Middle Eastern influence here, that's where we get some flute and stuff coming in. The fact that we never got Nightwish play with a orchestra, with a string section, with a choir, is just a shame. The fact that we never got an incredible quality Blu-ray or something with orchestra performing with Nightwish, with Marco singing and playing bass, come on. The fact that we'll never get that unless Marco were to come back for a special show or something, which would be a snub in the face of the new bass player, that's a true shame, a real shame that we never got that. And while I'm thinking about it, sorry, I know this is a really awesome, beautiful song, but while I'm thinking about it, shout out to all the musicians, the literal hundreds of musicians that performed all of the strings and choir that you hear on Storytime, Showtime, at Wacken. Tomos is not playing everything that you hear. A lot of that stuff that was the original orchestras that they recorded for the albums with the sessions. And one of the reasons all their live stuff sounds so good is because they're using real samples from real orchestras that were really written, arranged, and played for the albums themselves. This is really cool. This is a heavy part. Okay, now we have fast, like the beginning of the last song. We have harpsichord panned left and right, double octaved, or an octave up. That actually might have not have been a harpsichord patch. I think that was just an acoustic guitar patch on a keyboard. Wow, this does have a 90s feel to it. Man, the fact that that is Tarja. And again, I know that Thomas is like the featured vocal here, but there we have some gang vocals from the rest of the Nightwish members. Man, it's crazy to think about how young they were at this point. Remind me to ask Google a question when we're done with this. I want to know how old Thomas was when they recorded this. Man, why do all the songs end that way? That sucks. Weird. Weird decision. Astral Romance, song track 4. I love this. It feels raw. In some ways, this feels like the most metal album Nightwish ever made. But it doesn't have those other elements that Nightwish has come known for. You know, those symphonic and orchestral elements I was talking about. There's bits of that, but when you don't have the ability to... And, of course, the experience that Thomas gained over the 20, 30 years since recording this. 23 years, I guess it'd be. Anyway, the experience in writing and arranging, you know, this is basically just metal. Now we have Tarja here doing 2 takes of her vocal. Nope, I take it back. 3 parts. The center panned a little to left, panned a little to the right. Different harmony parts. I would definitely say the vocals are a little bit low in the pocket throughout, and that's very common for debut albums and things. You know, the vocalists aren't necessarily super confident in themselves, and when the guitars are very prominent. I would assume the person who mixed this was a guitar player, and their favorite part of the song was the guitar, and that's why it's sort of the most prominent thing. Ooh, interesting note there. So Tarja here doing 2 parts, panned. Oh, now we have Thomas in the middle. That's nice. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, too. Finnish is their first language, for sure. And you have to assume that their English has gotten better over the many, many years. So a band like this, whose debut album, all for the most part, sung in English. There might be some stuff in Finnish. I don't know if there is. No, it does look like the first part of the last track is in Finnish. But you have to assume that the mastery of the English language, and just, again, experience moving forward lyrically, you know, would make quite a bit difference from later on in their career, from the very first album. I'm not really paying very much attention to the vocals, though. I actually shouldn't even be having this open. I feel like it's distracting me. So there we know that they can let their instruments just play and play out. And then we have two string parts here playing. The main part off to the left, and then a sort of lower harmony off to the right. Guitar solo. So, that vocal is the same range, playing the same range as the guitars, and so it was almost unintelligible. Could not tell what it was saying at all. Okay, guitar solo off to the right a little. Love it. Love it. Amazing. Thomas with the harpsichord patch on the left now. The guitar solo is on the right slightly. Now we're balancing that out on the left with a harpsichord solo. Now the acoustic guitar is back. We also have movement in the guitar riff on the right, whereas the guitar on the left is just playing chords and letting them strum out. Now they're both playing together. Very nice. I saw when I was looking at Wikipedia that when they were touring for this album, I think they toured, or some of the songs on this album were put out as like a demo with Children of Bodom, which is another amazing Finnish metal band. Not a symphonic metal band, though. But hearing stuff like this, they could absolutely have toured with Children of Bodom. People would have loved both bands at the same show, whereas I don't know if that could have been said if Children of Bodom was on a tour with Nightwish in the last decade or so. Okay, great sounding acoustic guitars here. Some nice harmonics on the left side there. Now we have just a broken chord arpeggiated part on the right. Left side is an amazing acoustic guitar solo. This is track 5, by the way. Angels Fall First. This is the title track. Tarja. This feels a little bit more operatic. She has been using that sort of operatic style. This is really cool. Like, we're hearing the beginning of Nightwish, and in some ways, the beginning of modern symphonic metal. There's a flute, a live flute, a real acoustic flute. You can really tell what a difference it makes. It's just playing by itself with Thomas's strings. Okay, the flute goes away, and in its place is the acoustic guitar strumming again. Our broken arpeggiated chords. Okay, so there we have some vocals overlapping, so Tarja had to record the part twice. Impossible to duplicate live. But when you're performing something like that live, you could cut off the phrase. Now she's singing with herself there, doing a harmony. That's very nice. Very good arranging. Very beautiful acoustic guitar playing. I would like to learn more about Finnish folk music, Scandinavian folk music, which when I think of like Norwegian folk music, I don't necessarily think of acoustic guitars. So I have total ignorance on that sort of subject, like what their folk music would be. Obviously, I'm familiar with folk music from the United States, but, you know, when you say folk music and you're referring to Finnish folk music, when are we saying that started? I'll have to do some research on that. If anybody has a suggestion of something I could look up, leave me a comment. This is awesome. I would have to say this is probably my favorite song so far. I love these acoustic guitars, though. There's just something so beautiful about an acoustic guitar being played like this. You know, we've all heard someone singing and strumming on the acoustic guitar, doing an indie thing, indie folk thing, and it's just so different than this. I know it's meant to be different, but low note there for Tarja. Awesome. Awesome, man. Tarja never sings like this on any of their other albums. They lean very heavily into the operatic style for her. But also it makes more sense here because there's less things happening here. So for her to have a more sort of straightforward singing style almost makes sense. It does. Now we have two parts. So this is just, there was a big low plosive there in her vocals. One of her tracks, she puh into the microphone there. Ooh. Yes, here we're seeing we are taking a portal into the future with what Nightwish could have been. Can you imagine this having been re-recorded with full orchestra and choir? Ha, 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 ha. Ha, ha, ha. You know, you just imagine the string section being big and bombastic, and now they're just fading out like a lazy songwriter. And I don't care what anybody ever says. If you just fade your song out, you are lazy. Your song doesn't have a feeling of going off into the existence, existing forever. It doesn't. It's just lazy. Still very cool, though. Whoa, okay. Then come right back in with the electric guitars. And then Thomas having a very cool sounding little pan flute patch. Ba-ba-da-da-da. Ooh, cool stop there. This is Tutankhamun. Ooh. Yes. Cool guitar riff. Yep, key change. Yeah, heck yeah. This is Nightwish, man. You can tell. Very early and very primitive, though. Okay, Beyond the Pyramids. So, of course, it is about King Tut. Which, when did they discover King Tut's tune? When was that? It could have been around 1996, 1997. I remember when that happened. When I was in elementary, and I remember the Weekly Reader that had pictures of the tomb and everything on it. I remember hearing about it on the news. Or maybe that wasn't when it was discovered, just when it was being opened. I don't know. Interesting, though. I like the sort of unabashed, like, I'm just going to use a pan flute patch. I feel like nowadays if someone used a patch like that and played something like this, like, you'd get laughed off the stage, you know. That's really hoity-toity of me to think that way, but, you know. And obviously, Thomas wouldn't do that nowadays. He'd hire amazing musicians to do it. Or he'd do it himself, or he'd have a patch that was indistinguishably realistic sounding. This is great vocal stuff here. You can tell that the arrangement of this song is more complex. Not that the previous songs weren't complex. That Angels Fall First, the acoustic one we just heard, there was a lot going on there, but there weren't a lot of sounds happening. There was still complexity, but it was complexity within the individual instruments rather than complexity in the parts that they were playing. If that makes sense, if I said that right. And I know I mentioned earlier that I've made some music, but like do not consider myself a musician at all. I do not understand music theory on any sort of a deep or, resonating level. I love it. Also, just these like the stabs and on the drums and everything that go with the guitars. That is just so... Oh, that is cool. I don't know what kind of a sound that is. That's neat. Wow. I forgot what I was saying before. Ampu is always crushing it, you know? When you have guitars like this that are so dry and so in your face and so, you know, right there, the timing of everything is perfect rhythmically. If you've ever heard metal that was not played perfectly, a poor rhythmic section in a metal band is the death of the metal band. We've all heard it, I'm sure. Musicians that were just not as good as they needed to be for the parts they were playing, or weren't comfortable with the studio setting. Oh, that's what I was saying, the stabs. The ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Like, very Nightwish. Yeah, give me a solo. This is probably my favorite song now. Dang, shredding solo. Now we have some choir patch in the back. It's interesting that they recorded that mono. Oh, it's getting louder. Hey, that song ended and now we have a sound effect. Tutankhamen. A whistle patch on a keyboard. I love it. I don't know what that means, but amazing. Great. Whatever they were trying to do there, they did it. Track 7 right now. Now this is Nymphomaniac Fantasia. Is this about a cheating husband or boyfriend? Oh, real flute. You know, I gotta say, too, there's no, like... Yeah, you know what, I'm not gonna bring that up. Never mind. Love this. This song, 4 minutes 45 seconds long, but with the least amount of lyrics in the booklet as well. Okay, so now we have overdub tracks of the flute. Man, I wonder what people thought of this back in 1997. I wonder if I could find some reviews from like metal magazines and stuff. Oh, that bass note. Oh, awesome. Oh, this is cool. Come on, I almost wish... I want this album... I want Thomas to like remake this whole album with like their modern budget, their modern musicians they have access to. There's a lot of cool ideas here. Yes. Nice groove. The snare has a massive amount of reverb on it. You can really hear... It sounds like a room, but I'm assuming the drums were recorded very dry in a space that didn't have a lot of room to it. And then after the fact, there was reverb added to it. That's what it sounds like. And that would also have been the sort of the style back in the mid to late 90s. The bass really standing out here too, like I said earlier. Great bass note, bass sound. Thomas has some chorus patch slightly to the right. Panned slightly to the right. 2 Tara vocals. Guitar's back. Empu on the left side, just sort of palm muting, chugga, 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 chugga. Right side doing the more long, drawn-out power chords. Okay, now Taria doing vocal parts that are overlapping each other. Echo part there. Awesome. We have some different vocal or different synth parts here. And notice I said synth there because that sort of that synth pad thing that's happening there, that couldn't happen acoustically. But we also have sort of like a bell sound off to the left and some strings off to the right. I love this. This is almost like what you would get if you broke down all of the modern Nightwish music and took away all of the fancy production. This is what you would get. Not saying that this is how they write music or anything still, but like if you took everything away, all the pomp and circumstance, what you'd be left with are the sort of bare bones of the Nightwish songs, and the ideas of the keyboards and things. This is what you would have. Flute solo, baby, bring it on. Do it, Mr. What's your name? Mr. Asa Laitinen. Triplet pattern by Empu. Dum da da dum. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. Da 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 da. And they just fade the weird. It's weird. That's the weirdest part of this. Okay. Know why the nightingale sings. Okay, right away this sounds like just a Nightwish. Ba ba da. Ba ba da. Which Nightwish song is that? Ba ba da. Ba ba da. This definitely sounds like one of their other songs. The sudden dawning. Freed from the gravital leash, I swear the heavens in my reach. Ooh. So we have some screaming or something going on the sides here. A male vocal part. Thomas, maybe. Oh, wait. Hold on. We're on track 8 already. So, yeah, we're already in the songs that were... I hear no difference tonally from the songs that the 5 they recorded before. Although, hold on a second. It said here. We're on track 8, so that's 1, 2, 6, 8 that were all recorded after the fact when the record label asked them to record 4 more songs for a full album. I haven't been paying attention to that, but... I'm not hearing any difference sonically from the first recording session they had and the second one, which is really nice. Okay. Great solo here. Empu really doing a good job. You know, when they perform live, that's one of the things that's always impressed me. With just one guitar player, when a guitar solo is happening, Nightwish does not do tracking on the guitars. They do not have tracks running during their live shows of the guitars. When Empu's doing a solo, there is not guitars underneath that. There's bass guitar, and maybe Marco has a little bit of grittiness to his guitar, a little bit of distortion on there as bass. But Empu's doing his guitar solos over just basically bass and drums. And the orchestra, keyboards, whatever. Now, for this song, I feel like there might have been a couple of different Thomas parts, and they're a little further back and mixed in a little bit nicer. Less raw sounding. Ooh, piano sound. Piano solo, straight up. It's like a little jazz solo here. Both hands playing. Oh, cool. Love that alternating. See there, they can end a song. I wish I would have been paying a bit more. Okay, so here's the last track. This is Lapland. This is 4 movements. The first movement is 2 minutes 15. Second movement, 1:19. Third movement, 3:12. And then the last movement, 2:34. Okay, so we have 3 tracks of acoustic guitar here. Love it. But we had a sort of a solo going on the right, a strummed part on the arpeggiated part on the left, and then the strummed part right in the middle. It almost reminds me of a banjo. That's what it sounds like. It's in the register of a banjo. And it's a little bit loose like a banjo, too. I wonder if it was a special type of acoustic guitar there Empu was playing. That's very cool. The very interesting acoustic guitar part. This is the only part that has finish in it somewhere. I love the finish song that they have in On Once towards the end of the album. Love that. And I would say, too, I absolutely love listening to music that's not in English. English is the only language that I speak. And I have reacted to several albums on my channel here before that are not in English. And my favorite band of all time is never sings in English. They sing in Norwegian. Kaiser's Orchestra or Janov, their soloist, their singer now with his solo career. But also Japanese bands like Mook that I absolutely love. You know, a lot of German bands that sing in German, things like that. I love listening to music that's not in English because what it does is it frees you from the burden of having to try to even relate or understand the lyrics. It makes the vocals an instrument just like every other part of the song, and that's how I like to listen to music. I like to pay attention to the lyrics, know what's being said, and maybe take something away from the message if it touches me in that way. But I also really enjoy just forgetting that the lyrics are singing or saying a message to me and just thinking of them as their own instrument. And you don't have any issues doing that if you're listening to music in a language that's other than a language that you speak. So I will champion listening to music in foreign languages all day. A lot of really cool low sounds here. Low frequencies build up. Ooh, marimba on the left here. Like a marimba or sort of like a wooden xylophone type sound. Love it. This is very dreamy like. This is witch drums. Now those sound like those tom drums could actually just be Thomas playing toms on his keyboard. It does not sound like toms they maybe would have had access to at the time. Could be real drums though. I really like this. It has a cool ethereal feel to it. 119 only, so we're almost done with this. We're going to be moving into the second movement here. I like that each movement is its own track. That's nice. It is weird that they on the CD they have it listed as like track 10 is a return to the sea, when in reality on the CD we're on track 11 and we're on movement 3 of track 9. Man, that snare has a crazy reverb effect on it. So we have Tarja doing 2 vocal parts, harmony parts, and then an echo part slightly to the left. Change in the feeling of the song there. Just one keyboard. It is so hard to play synthetic strings on a keyboard, especially at this time. Like, these strings do not sound like real strings. He's playing something that sounded like, Gothic music would sound like at the time, or the early 90s, just unabashedly playing fake strings. Not something that you hear very much nowadays. You pretty easily buy programs, keyboard programs, or programs for your computer that you can insert MIDI notes into and have very realistic sounding strings or any sort of orchestral instrument. So to listen to something like this there is like a special element to this of like a years gone by where this wouldn't be done anymore like this, If there was a band doing stuff like this, it would be considered, I think, a lot more gothic-y, because the sort of fake string sound was something that was very associated with the gothic music of the early to mid 90s, which I think was also partly an influence for Thomas, but at the same time, what he had was his keyboard, whatever he was using, or his multiple keyboards, and the patches that they had on them. So, like, there totally is this, like, level of, like, innocence and, like, imperfection, and it's not necessarily a lack of polish, because everything does sound really good. All the keyboard sounds that I'm hearing are all, like, low-passed, because keyboard sounds are just notoriously very twinkly sounding, a lot of high frequencies in them. And so that could really take away and be distracting from the guitars, from the vocals. And so by low passing them at like probably 3K, you're getting the definition in them, but you're not getting all of the crazy high frequency breathiness that you would have from like strings if you just played them on a keyboard. So the mixing is done very well. Everything is done very well, recorded very well. But there's like an element to this that's like, it's like Thomas said, that like sort of like childish, like the lack of production in terms of getting someone to really play the stringed instruments. And now this like flute sounding thing, like Nightwish would just have a flute player play that, or someone playing an instrument that sounded like that. But just having Thomas do it on his keyboard, with a bit of imperfection to it, and like there's just something to it that's very special. Like, I feel that. It's just an innocence. It totally is. And again, that doesn't mean simplicity, though it is a simplicity regarding to the amount of sounds you're hearing, but there's still complexity to the arrangements and everything, and the mixing is done very well. I'll bet it was fun for the person who went through and redid the remaster. Actually, I wonder if it says that. Remastered where? It doesn't say. And I will just say, it doesn't really... it just says reissue designed by this. Mastered at Finvox Studios. Nightwish Reloaded. If this is how the album originally sounded, mastering and everything back in 1997, like mix-wise and everything, amazing, incredible. This is great. Now we have almost like a mariachi sort of style acoustic guitar solo here. And we're back to the way the very track first started, with fast-moving acoustic guitar solo on the left, some acoustic guitar sort of chops and stabs on the right, basically doing a da-da-da-da. That's awesome. An accompanying part to the solo, and then in the middle we have the strums. Now that's gone away, we have the strum on the right, broken arpeggiated chord. Tarja doing multiple layers of vocals here. Now remember, this is what the end of the original album was. This would have been the last thing that we heard. So we're on track 12 of the CD right now, which is actually movement 4 of track 9, Lapi. Awesome. All right, I'm going to pause it for a second. Okay. That would have been the very end of the album as it was in 1997. Now, I want you to take a look at these photos here. I don't know if I can zoom in on them good enough for you to tell. They look crazy in those photos. Thomas and basically everyone looks like they could have been like on the OC or Dawson's Creek or something. Tarja, especially in that like striped shirt. It's just very weird and striking to see them in these clothes when we know everything from this point on was sort of like gothic influenced, you know, a look. They had a gothic influenced sort of darker gothic-y look to their clothing, to the way they presented themselves, and to just have them in, you know, Empu's got like a white shirt with like a long sleeve 90s, you know, like a shirt over it, button up shirt. Thomas just has short hair, spiked up kind of, you know, like interesting and different. All right, I'm hitting play, and we're going to go to track, what's going to be track 13. It's going to be A Return to the Sea. This is the first bonus track. Starting right now. Okay, so that was interesting. On track 12, after the song ended, there was actually a reversal. There were five bonus seconds, then it went to the next part. Okay. Okay. Right away, different production, you can tell. A little bit, at least. Tarja is much more louder in the mix. Thomas has something happening on the left here with a patch, like a weird pad patch. Some like tinkles and stuff in there, like a fantasy patch. And then on the right, we have some descending harp being played on the keyboards. Tarja's vocals have a lot more low and mid range in them. A lot more definition in the lows to them. Very nice. Sounds much higher quality recording, like a better microphone or better mixing. It's not necessarily better, but different sound. Very cool. Okay, we have some drums. Okay, totally different. Everything here sounds different. The bass is a lot more sort of farty sounding, really. But that's just the way it is. The drums sounds like the same kick drum for sure. Snare drum a lot drier, more mid-range to it. No guitars so far in this song. Man, Tarja's vocals are very dry. The drier a vocal is, the more imperfections would show if there are imperfections in it. Okay, now we have some guitars. Same thing, recorded twice. One pan left, one pan right. Sounds like the same patch, same setting on the guitar, maybe a different pickup. Now the guitars are gone. Oh, cool. Fox and the Hound. The next lyrics of the song: Trilobite and Animalocaris. The prey and the hunter, survival of the fittest, fall of man. Trilobite and Animalocaris. Okay, guitar. Interesting drum thing there. I forgot to pay attention to how she pronounced Animalocaris. Okay, so we're getting dangerously close to bad distortion, especially on the left side. When you push something so hard in mastering that certain frequencies bunch up too much and they start to distort in an unintentional way, that is bad distortion. And there was a lot of that happening in music when the compression wars were a really big bad problem in the sort of 2000s, 2005 to 2015 or so. That was really a big issue, and it's only now that we're sort of coming down from that, where music doesn't everything being produced doesn't feel like, regardless of the style of music, it has to be louder than the thing that was made the day before. So I'm glad we're coming off of that, but I'm getting little hints of that here, where when Empu is playing the big loud chords and it's sort of filling the space, some of the mid frequencies are bunching up too much that the sound frequency, just the spectrum can't handle it, and there's some distortion happening there. Those are some really interesting sounding patches. Sounds like it's a combination of different things, but I'm assuming Thomas just played this on his keyboard in one. Okay, now we go back to sort of the beginning of the song with the bass, sort of woofy sounding bass. Interesting. I mean, like, the lyrics were referencing, all sorts of different things, but we're talking about Darwin and theory of evolution, I assume, things like that, which is what they sing about nowadays. So that's kind of neat to see. It's cool to have the song called Return to the Sea, and that's the last lyric of the song. That's kind of neat. All right, so now we're going to have Nightwish demo of the song Nightwish, which I think was one of the first 3 songs that they created back when Thomas wanted to do, what his goal was to have it sound like songs that were sung around a campfire. And I remember I was reading on Wikipedia that he wanted it to sound like very atmospheric, and I think mostly acoustic and almost folk influenced. And this song, Nightwish, is 5 minutes and 49 seconds long. And another thing that's funny about all this Nightwish stuff, I really remember always liking their song Over the Hills and Far Away, the cover song. And I think what happened in my brain was I registered that Over the Hills and Far Away was never on any of their albums. And so I think that I knew in my head that they had released music at some point that I didn't have, because it was only released as like an EP or something. And I think maybe in my head that's what I thought Angels Fall First was. And it's funny too, because when I found out about this album earlier this year and I looked, I was like, oh, maybe Over the Hills and Far Away is on this album, and that's why I've never had it. And it turns out that that's just not true. Over the Hills and Far Away was, in fact, released on an EP. And then actually more recently, I have upstairs somewhere, I didn't bring that down either, I have the Highest Hopes collection that Nightwish released. And I got that actually at Goodwill earlier this year for 59 cents. And I found it and I was really excited, and I started looking at it and I was like, wait a minute, I think some of these songs are from that album that I knew I didn't have yet at that point. And so I just bought the CD for 50 cents, put it on my shelf, and never listened to it. So now that I'm done with this, I can listen to that album and hear some like remastered versions of some of their earlier stuff, including some of the songs on here. But I think Over the Hills and Far Away is on there as well. So I do actually now have that song on CD format, but... Oh boy. Oh boy, you get the orchestra hit. Oh boy. That's so awesome. That's kind of like what I was saying earlier. Like, there's like an innocence to that, like an ignorance to that. Like, you never, unless it's done ironically, you never hear the orchestra hit sound on an album ever. Like I said, unless it's being done ironically, and here it's just what Thomas had available to him. They were doing it as demos and things. Tarja sounded basically like she did on the album. Got a harmony part here. Double parts, just 2 parts. The harmony here that's happening is actually a lower part harmony, which is nice. I think that's a little tougher to sing. I could be wrong there, but it's always easier to sing a fifth above, but singing the fifth or the fourth below. There's that orchestra hit, that low frequency one. Love it. I wonder how Thomas envisioned this being like campfire songs when so much of it is the keyboard. The acoustic guitar sounds fantastic, though, I will say. Throughout this whole CD, the acoustic guitar has sounded fantastic. It's cool also to think that they got their name of Nightwish. The name came from this song. Okay, so that sounds like a real flute. Spoken word to the left side. And that probably is Tarja talking. Okay, now we have piano here coming into double. We're also doubling the speaking part. Not easy to double speaking part. Speaking part. Cool. And they actually ended that song too. I'm just so curious what the piano. This is the first song we've gotten where it seems like piano is one of the driving instruments, driving forces. Piano, I say, not keyboard. Ooh. Now that acoustic guitar is a acoustic guitar that is they're using the pickup on the acoustic guitar. Not good. Does not sound very good. But these are demos, remember. Tarja really doing the operatic vocals here. Very nice. See, one of the things we didn't really have to worry about on this album that Nightwish has had to worry about on all their music after this album was the more things you add, the more elements you add to a metal song, the harder it is for the metal to retain its metalness. When you listen to a Nightwish album, the metal aspect definitely takes a back seat to all the other things that are happening. Like when you listen to Dark Passion play, it still sounds heavy, but a lot of the heaviness is really coming from the drums and the bass, and the guitars have to be toned down. And when I say toned down, what Nightwish chooses to do, there's different ways to approach it. But what Nightwish chooses to do is to low pass filter their guitars a lot of the time. So there's not a lot of high frequencies in the guitars. They're just using the guitar mainly for the sort of chuggy stuff. And then the definition of the guitars is brought down. And what that does is allow you to sort of layer over the top keyboards, but then also on later Nightwish albums, more importantly, orchestra and choir. And it's really easy when you have a genre of music like metal, where everything that's happening in the song that's not guitar, bass, drum can get overpowered by the guitars, bass, and drums. So you have to fight with it, and you have to come up with solutions. And what Nightwish always did was, like I said, they sort of tamed down the guitars so that they could layer everything over the top of it, and everything kind of created this bed. So essentially what would happen is, if you took away all of Nightwish, you took away the metal aspect, you would still have full sound, entire stereo spectrum, all sorts of things happening, flying around the space. And I think some of the albums, they have orchestral versions, or Nightwish only does instrumental versions. You see, it says orchestral version on Dark Passion Play, the deluxe edition I have, but the second disc is just instrumental, basically. It's not actually orchestral, it's instrumental. And I think Imaginarum's the same way. CD2 is just instrumental, yeah. Did they do that with instrumental version on Endless Forms Most Beautiful? And the second disc on Human to Nature is, of course, the All the Works of Nature Which Adorn the World, which is amazing. It's just full-on orchestral stuff that Thomas made. And I know it seems like I'm ignoring this song, and I guess I kind of am. But when you have demos like this, sonically, it's been basically the same thing. But anyway, what I was saying was, one of the reasons I love symphonic metal so much is because it is doing a lot more than you might, at first glance, it might seem. Like, mixing a symphonic metal song would be incredibly harder than doing just an orchestral song or just a metal song. I'm not saying those two things are easy, but it's significantly easier to approach a project of those things. A metal band, as long as you have good sounding guitars and good sounding drums, and really mainly just good sounding guitars, you can make a decent sounding metal album. Orchestra, all you have to do is clean, flat setting microphones in the correct positions and let the orchestra play itself. Let the musicians perform and just capture what they're doing. Okay, now we have a different sound happening in this song here. We have some strings building. This sounds like Nightwish. But when you take those two things and combine them, especially the way Nightwish does, which there's all sorts of extra auxiliary percussion, there's xylophones, there's bells, there's choirs, there's children singers like on The Poet and the Pendulum, there's different things like that. The more elements you add, the more difficult it is to balance everything. And different bands do it differently. Like, Epica is a great example of a band that never lost the metal. Like, Epica is a metal band first, and everything that they do is to accompany the metal. They have harsh vocals still, and while they're doing the harsh vocals, they can drop almost everything out of the song other than the metal aspects, the guitar, drums, bass, and then the harsh vocals. But they can also have a few things come in here and there, pan differently around to find ways to make it enter the mix and be mixed correctly. But Nightwish, it's almost like the metal is the secondary aspect, and Thomas is writing, and Pip Williams, who I need to shout out for the guy who arranges and conducts all of the orchestras with Thomas. We're fading out this song here. And then we have one more track, which is the Itainen demo version. Oh. So we have like a reverse reverb effect there. Very cool. Tarja singing acoustic guitar off to the right. Now that is a acoustic guitar recorded with a microphone, not acoustic guitar using the plugged into some sort of a direct in or anything like that. But just to finish my point, I like the way Nightwish does all the aspects are just as important as every other aspect to their music. And in some metal bands, that's not the case. And then you have a band like Within Temptation, who has gone a much more poppy route with all sorts of electronic drums and more pop elements, and then occasionally incorporating the metal, like the heavier, chuggier riffs, and also occasionally incorporating the sort of orchestra, keeping the clean female soaring vocals constant, you know? Very interesting how the different bands approach different things. And I've always appreciated the way Nightwish has said, we are a symphonic metal band. We're going to make sure that you know we are symphonic. Ooh, very cool acoustic guitar solo here on the left. I get like little hints of like mariachi stuff, and that's very, very cool. And I don't know if mariachi is the right way to sort of say like flamenco, sort of Spanish style guitar. I don't know if Empu was ever influenced by that, or if I just don't know enough about sort of Finnish folk music to know like is that an influence from Finnish folk history? So right now we just have strings coming up, spread wide, low strings, like a synth pad. Tarja singing her butt off, for I'm sure as how young she was at the time. Empu playing the acoustic guitar, being very nice and patient with it. You know, I'm sure they were listening to a click track while they recorded this. Okay, that's the end of it. 72 minutes this album is. Holy cow. 74, 80 minutes is like the longest you can have on an album. Okay. Okay, so now this video is already probably an hour and a half long because I talked so long at the beginning. So what I'm going to do is not talk as long here. But I do want to do my sort of overview of the album. So I just listened to, for the very first time, Angels Fall First by Nightwish. And it's kind of sad because now I know that I've listened to it. I can never go back and listen to it for the first time again. And I will say that I am impressed with the sonic quality. And like I said, I don't know if this album sounded exactly like this when it came out in 1997 or if it was remastered and remixed. Sometimes when you remaster the tracks, like say they just took the original stereo tracks that they had, maybe they were even the unmastered, but the original unmastered stereo mixes of the songs, sent them today with new modern equipment, modern methods of mastering, and had that mastered differently now, it would have been probably approached from a completely different place. So the mastering could have done a huge difference. But to me, that sounds so fantastic. The high fidelity quality of the sound makes me think that makes me think that it was actually remixed and not necessarily just remastered. But it sounded fantastic. I was trying to explain while I was listening here a little bit at the end. To me, one of the special aspects of that album, which I did like it a lot. I don't know if I've said that yet here. I loved it, actually. Very excited. It sounded like Nightwish. And I was a little afraid that it would sound like Nightwish, but just sort of like an untested Nightwish, a looser Nightwish, a Nightwish that didn't necessarily know what they were doing yet. And I think that you could maybe say that. But at the end here, what I was trying to articulate was that there's this like, it's exactly what Thomas said at the beginning. Like, there's this like innocence to it. It's like I was saying, Thomas was playing parts. He was playing obviously fake sounding string parts almost throughout the entire album. And that is an incredible rarity nowadays. If you have a rock band that's using maybe some string parts or something, you could maybe tell that it was like a fake string part or whatever. But Thomas on this album was like unabashedly just playing the keyboards that he had and the string patches that he had. And he didn't even really try to make it sound like real strings. It just sounds like fake strings. And there's a specific sound to that, and you don't hear it anymore. You just don't. Nowadays you could get the MIDI files, send them to someone, and have someone who has like really expensive string patches, on their laptop or whatever, just put the sounds through it. And you could even yourself have really fancy patches on your laptop, your keyboard, what have you, put the notes in, and come out with something that sounds pretty close to real, honest to goodness recorded acoustic string section or orchestra or whatever. And that would be pretty cheap and easy to do nowadays. And that's what a lot of albums have. If you hear a lot of songs that have like what sounds like an orchestra or strings on them, there's a good chance nowadays that it could be totally all synthetically created. We know with Nightwish, they have it listed in the liner notes of the album, the people who perform. Well, that was a bad. Let me check out Dark Passion Play. It is listed in here, the names of the people who performed in the orchestra. We have right here, you see all these names here on this sheet, on this page? Those are all people who played in the orchestra. There's, too many to count, but over 50 for sure. And then over here we have people in the choir. That's, 50 names right there just for the choir. So we know that Nightwish makes it all real. Oh, and they have a gospel choir because, of course, one of my all-time favorite Nightwish songs, Meadows of Heaven. Really underappreciated song, and I think Annette's best song. I know a lot of people like Amaranth, and that definitely is an Annette song, but man, Meadows of Heaven is so great. But anyway, it's fun listening to an album that is just unabashedly what it is. And what this album is their first album. They're sort of like demo recordings. It was Empu in the studio recording acoustic guitar, and then Thomas coming in and playing his one or two lines of whatever string patch or harpsichord. He used a lot of harpsichord or harp sounds because those are pretty easily created on a keyboard to sound like a real harpsichord would or a real harp would sound, because those are very fast. A harpsichord and a harp and a piano and like a glockenspiel or anything like that, even organs to a certain degree, are really good. You can really play those and make them sound like the real thing on a keyboard because they have fast transients and fast tails, fast tops, fast tails. It's just like a bar of sound, which maybe that's a weird way to try to explain it. But when you have a sound like that, it's much easier to make it sound realistic. Whereas strings, the emotion and the realness of the string comes from the imperfections, from hearing the rosin on the bow, from hearing the slight differences in timing. That's where you get the sort of lushness of a string and the very slow moving. When you're playing a stringed instrument, which I've never done, but I'm aware, you can control the volume, you can control all this while you're playing, and you can't do that with the keyboard. You hit the note, you activate the note, you trigger the note, and the note plays however it was programmed to play. And if you're playing multiple notes and you hit them at multiple times, you have different sort of transients, you have different sort of intros and outro points for each sound, and you let go and they have their own tails programmed. So you can definitely tell that the strings are not real strings. And that aspect of this album, that whole aspect of it sounding like it, I don't want to say low budget because it's not low budget. All of it was recorded great. All of it was mixed well. All of it was performed well. But it just like, there's this feeling to it that you don't get on albums anymore. And I don't know if it's innocence. I don't know if it's ignorance. I don't know what it is. It almost makes me think of like, if you give a monkey the greatest instrument in the world, he will not produce anything that's worth keeping. But if you give a master musician, a great musician like Thomas, the cheapest, most ridiculous tiny little cheapest keyboard, he could create a masterpiece, because that's what it's about. It's about using the tools you have at your disposal. And that is what Nightwish did. Tarya's singing blew me away because it was not what I expected it to be. There were multiple times where she was singing, and she was singing in a way, in a style that I have never heard her sing before on anything else she's ever sung on. And I really liked that. I enjoyed it. I also commend the fact that they did not just drench her vocals or Thomas's vocals in reverb. That's something that could have easily happened. Usually when you have younger musicians that are maybe a little self-conscious when they go in to record vocals or things like that, you try to hide the imperfections. You try to hide the sort of second-guessing nature of how they were performing by using effects, drenching something in reverb, having delays all over the place, or multi-tracking everything a million times. And they did not do that. You hear the imperfections in the voice. You can literally hear Thomas and on occasion Tarja singing wrong notes that are flat or sharp. You can hear it. It's there. But the thing is, that adds to what I was trying to talk about earlier. The imperfections of this are what make it what it is. And that's why I think it's special. And, that's why I think that I'm really glad I got to hear it. And I'm glad I got to share it with you guys. I think the album, the drums didn't really stick out to me at all the whole time, with the few exceptions of there being like a long space for there to be a drum fill, and the timing of it was a little bit wonky because it was like the drums were the transition into the next phase of the song. And instead of there being some really nice, tasty drum fill, it was just like a pretty standard thing done maybe a little off timing. Very rare. And I'm not saying that the drums were ever really off time so much as just in those specific transition parts. But other than that, the drums didn't really stick out to me. The bass in a few songs really stood out because it was just, the songs that were more acoustic based, when there was bass there with just acoustic guitar, you can obviously really tell the bass was there. And Empu was playing bass parts. He approached it from the mindset of a bass player rather than just doubling the guitars or playing the root notes of the chords he's playing on the guitar. Now, the fact that they didn't really have a bass player at the time when they recorded this stuff is interesting too, because a lot of the acoustic songs, there just was no bass in them. It was just acoustic guitars panned left, right, middle, wherever they wanted the acoustic guitars and however they were balancing them. And then Tarja singing in the middle and Thomas playing in the middle with some strings or whatever. And then maybe there'd be a second keyboard part off to the left or the right, and then slowly sort of building the song from there. But because they didn't have millions of overdubs for Thomas, I'm sure at the time when they recorded this, he could have said, okay, we've got the acoustic guitar parts or the electric guitar parts. The metal song is there. We've got the drums, bass, guitars recorded. Now I'm going to go in and record a track of flute, then record a track of high strings and a track of low strings and a track of the orchestra patch and a track of bells and then a track of harpsichord, and like layered these giant thick layers. So it could have sounded more like an orchestra, but they chose not to do that. And maybe one of the reasons they chose not to do that was because Thomas wanted to sort of faithfully recreate this album when they performed live. I think this album, with the exception of all the overdubbing of things, Tarja can obviously only sing one line of vocals. Empu can only play one line on the guitar. So anytime there was harmonies or anything like that, if they weren't using tracks back then, which I'm sure they didn't have the money or the time or the technology or the equipment to have good tracks playing, though maybe they did when they were performing, I don't know. But, they're playing the song and Thomas is playing a string part, so he's on the same keyboard he probably used to record the album, playing the string part. And that gave the whole album a really sort of like raw, simplistic feeling to it. And like I was trying to say, simple in the way that it sounded, sonically simple, not simple in arrangement or technique or performance. The arrangements and the performing was all complex in the way that it needed to be. Nothing was ever very flashy or too progressive. They were talking on the wiki page that I looked up before this, they were talking about it being more progressively influenced. And I didn't really hear that or feel that too much, with the exception of the songs not really coming back to the chorus very much. The structuring of the songs was such that there were several parts to each song, and they would maybe go back to a part like a guitar riff or something, but there weren't a lot of choruses that were really like, okay, here's the chorus, we're going to sing along with it. There was no Dark Chest of Wonders. There was no, um, Last Ride of the Day, a great example. Song structured A, B, A, B, C, B, or whatever. Like, when they get to the chorus, once upon a night we'll sail through the carnival of life. That's a song that you can have your arms around your buddies and sing along with it. You can't really do that to a lot of this album. And it's just a different way of approaching, structuring a song. I say in all my videos, I always talk about structuring because it's really important to me, and I didn't really mention it very much here because I didn't know what I was really to expect. But I think that, the structuring and everything that they did makes sense for what they were doing at the time. And then also knowing that this project was created to be mostly acoustic and ambient, and then how it transitioned into being more metal, I understand the progressive, elements. And even more nowadays, with the 2 Floor albums, they are structuring the songs in such a way that they're not necessarily going back to the chorus a third time. I was really disappointed. My favorite song on Endless Forms Most Beautiful is My Walden, which I know kind of contradicts what I was saying about Troy's influence and how I don't really care for that. But I love the chorus in My Walden. I like the sort of folkiness of it. It kind of reminds me of I Want My Tears Back, but they don't actually go to the chorus of My Walden a third time. Or if I remember correctly, they do, but all the instruments go away and it's just the vocals. I would have liked to have them come back in, bring everything in, finish it, complete the song, complete the idea, complete the thought, the musical thought, and then let the song end, rather than leaving me hanging, wanting more. I really don't like it. I want a song when I'm listening to it to be fulfilling, but that's just me in my opinion. Tarja did great. Like I said, she had different styles she was singing with on this album. Her vocals were very dry, like I said, not covered and drenched in reverb and effects to hide any imperfections. She did really good when she was doing her harmonies and things like that. I don't know if she had like a professional vocal coach while they were recording. I'm assuming every album after this, when they got picked up by the big label and everything, they all had, she probably had a coach. She had all this, not that she would necessarily need it, because obviously once you get a certain degree of experience in the music industry, she probably have a better idea of what she needed to do than any coach could ever tell her. But I don't know how many resources they had while recording this. And so that's where the fun kind of comes out of it. Like, oh, that's what I was going to ask. Hey, Google, how old is Tuomas Holopainen?
44 years old.
Hey, Google, what year was Tuomas Holopainen born?
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Well, shoot, if he's 44, then you can go back to what? He was born in 1987-ish or so? No, 1977. About. Or 78, I think. So then he would have been in high school in like 1990-ish. So we're talking being out of high school, out of college for maybe 3-4 years at the point when they're making this. Imagine being 20. Imagine being 20 something and starting Nightwish, and then being 40 and looking back on your career, and how far you've come. It's interesting to think about how young they were at the time. Hey, Google, how old is Tara Turunen?
44 years old.
Same age. I did read online that they had the same vocal teacher in college, I think. I think that's how they knew each other. Man, what a cool experience to get to hear this album. I truly loved it. I think it was great. The production was great. The acoustic guitars, I want to mention real quick, were recorded perfectly, with the exception of the penultimate song on this album, which again was a demo, but you could definitely tell they just plugged the acoustic guitar direct in and used the pickup on the guitar. Never, ever, ever, if you're in the music industry, Never record acoustic guitars like that. Always take a microphone and put it somewhere in front of the acoustic guitar. It will sound better that way, I promise you. And if you're performing live, if they can give you a microphone for your mouth, they can give you a microphone for the acoustic guitar. Do not let them directly plug the acoustic guitar in. It sounds like garbage every time. So, with that being said, I'm going to end this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you watched the whole way through, thank you so much. I do not make tons of videos. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to like subscribe to my channel or anything. I really enjoy reading the comments. Even if you're going to call me a stupid fat poo-poo head, that's fine. Do that. I want to see it. But I love reading the comments. My channel is incredibly small. I'm not trying to become some famous YouTuber. My channel's not monetized in any way. I don't even know how to put ads on a video. I don't even know if I could. But, you know, like, I just do this because it's fun. I do it because I enjoy it. I love listening to music for the first time and sharing that with you all. I wish I could be in a room with you while we were listening to it so we could sit and talk. But unfortunately, this is all we've got. And so I hope you were able to enjoy it. Like I said, coming up on my channel, I haven't posted a video for a while because over the summer I actually recorded a whole Harry Potter podcast, reading Harry Potter with my 10-year-old nephew, the first book for the first time. And that will eventually be on MuggleNet, which is the website that I work for, to plug that for a second. But I said I have coming up in just, I think, 1 week or so, Spirit Box debut album. Cannot wait. So excited. It could be album of the year. It has potential. But then we also have We Butter the Bread coming up. We Butter the Bread with Butter. Love that band. Gold Kinder is one of my all-time favorite metal albums. Absolutely love it. Star Sailor's 20th anniversary of Love is coming my way when it really is released. And then also, I recently got on eBay. I got a copy of the new Frost album, the progressive metal band Frost. Well, they're not even really progressive electronic band, actually. Frost, their new album that came out this year. So that's coming up on my channel. If that sounds interesting to you, maybe check back here at some point. I do have reactions from this year to a couple of bands you might be interested in. Danish metal band Vola, really cool band, metal band. There's heavy parts, but there's no harsh vocals. So if you're someone who loves Nightwish and symphonic metal, but you don't care for like the metally, hardcore, harsh vocal aspects of a lot of metal, check out Vola. I highly recommend. I also have Epica's album Omega, which was released earlier this year. I have a reaction I did just like this for that band. Evanescence album this year, The Bitter Truth. Album really disappointed me. So check out my channel if you want, if you like this format. I promise to God I don't have any videos that are as long as I'm sure this one's going to end up being. But also you can check out, I do my top 12 albums of the year list every year, and I've been doing that for a decade now. So last year in 2020, I did a big kerfuffle about creating my list of my top 12 albums of the decade from 2010 to 2020. And I had so much fun doing that, had my whole family help me out. And you can go check out those 12 videos on my channel and the accompanying videos. There's some good metal albums on there. So anyway, I'm going to end the video here. I just want to say one more time, thank you very much. And as always, go out, listen to new music, find something that's really good and share it with someone that you think might like it. And almost more importantly than that, share it with someone that you think maybe wouldn't like it, because who knows, you might be able to convert them and they might become a big fan of that band. And that is what we're all here for, to share music. Anyway, thank you very much. Talk to you later.